let me briefly discuss about paper 2, these topics. As I said, paper 2 is concerned with Indian society structure and change. It is purely related to the Indian society. Various aspects related to the Indian society are studied as part of this paper. Then, first one, we begin with perspectives on the study of Indian society. This is 100% guarantee topic. 100% a question will be asked on these three perspectives. One, either on Indological perspective, structural functional perspective, and Marxist perspective. If you look at the 2022 question paper, 2023 question paper, two questions were asked about these perspectives. I told you perspective means that how you look at the social reality, how to understand the social reality. So, sociologists have studied about Indian society by using different perspectives, of which these three are important. One is Indological perspective, and there are G.S. Gurye. G.S. Gurye was a traditional sociologist who tried to analyze Indian society from the point of view of the religious scriptures. Okay. Indology means what? Indology is nothing but study of a society from the existing literature, especially religious literature. So he talked about Indian society from the point of view of religious literature, especially Hindu religious literature. Then we have structural functional perspective of M.N. Srinivas. M.N. Srinivas, a most prominent Indian sociologist who has initiated a method called fieldwork method. That means a sociologist has to live with the people, interact with the people, then collect the data. On the basis of that empirical data, analyze the Indian society. Then Marxist perspective, it was adopted by A.R. Desai. A.R. Desai tried to apply the Marxist perspective to the Indian society, to the understanding of Indian society. That we will discuss. Then impact of colonial rule on Indian society. There is an argument among sociologists that the colonial legacy is continued even after independence. There is so much of colonial impact on Indian society, Indian culture, even Indian traditions. Even most of our traditions have been modernized in line with the British culture. So, social background of Indian nationalism. This was actually discussed by A.R. Desai. How the nationalist consciousness has developed among Indians. Desai's argument was that prior to independence, right, there was no nationalist consciousness. Nationalist consciousness has developed stage by stage. So he tried to construct the development of nationalist consciousness among different social groups in Indian society, especially during the freedom struggle. Right? So how India as a nation emerged. Similarly, modernization of Indian tradition. A sociologist, namely Yogendra Singh, he has written one book on modernization of Indian tradition. Prior to the British, Indian society was a traditional society. Right? The pre-British society, pre-British Indian society was different from the post-British Indian society. Why? Because pre-British Indian society was a traditional society interacted with a British society which was already a modern society. So Indian society has acquired certain ideas or ideologies like the concept of liberalism, right? Concept of rationalism, concept of secularism. All these have been borrowed from the British culture. Then there were several protest movements and social reform movements. We need to discuss about the protest and social reform movements during the colonial period and the post-colonial period. All that. Then rural and agrarian social structure. If you look at the Indian society, it constitutes of three types of societies: rural society, urban society, and tribal society. So simply we discuss about the structure, issues, development, and change. Would you get my point? In these three types of societies, right? Structure, development, issues, and change. I'm simplifying that. Suppose if you look at the rural society, agrarian structure is nothing but a rural social structure. Indian society is considered as an agrarian society. Why? Because even today, around 67% of the people live in Indian villages, and majority of them directly or indirectly depend upon agriculture and allied activities. So we need to understand the agrarian social structure in rural India and importance of village studies. Actually, village studies have started around 1950s, 60s. On what aspects they have focused. Then some sociologists have developed certain models of agrarian social structure. For example, a sociologist known as Daniel Thorner has discussed about agrarian social structure in Indian society. You can find a typical kind of a agrarian social structure. Then land reforms, which is very important. You know, during the pre-independent period and post-independent period, land was considered as the main source of income, right? But how land as an economic resource was distributed in Indian society, that is more important, right? During the British period, we have Jamindari system, Raitwari system, right? Then Mahalwari system. All these systems were exploitative in nature. And land was concentrated in the hands of the rich jamindars, landlords, or big farmers. And majority of the farmers are the small farmers, marginal farmers, right? Or the landless laborers. So that structure we need to understand. So that is why during the post-independent period, Government of India has initiated land reforms legislation. So what is the land reform legislation? What are the important measures initiated as part of land reforms? And what is its impact on agrarian society? That's what we have to discuss. Then caste system, which is again very, very important system. According to the sociologists, without understanding the caste system, we just can't understand Indian society. You take economic system or political system or religion, all these are directly linked to the caste system. But what exactly we have to discuss? Then origin and development of the caste. Characteristics, general characteristics or traditional characteristics of the caste system. Functions of the caste system. But nowadays they are not asking questions on just characteristics and functions of caste system. The question is asked like this: critically examine the changing trends caste system in contemporary Indian society. Do you think that caste will survive in future? Do you think caste will survive in future in the context of modernization and globalization? It's an analysis. Now we have to analyze. If you want to analyze, first of all, you should know what are the traditional features of the caste system. Is it true or not? If at all changes are taking place in the caste system, in which areas of the caste changes are taking place? It's a very interesting topic. And many studies have been conducted by sociologists with regard to the changing trends in caste system. Now, tribal communities, which is again, I told you, rural, urban and tribal. Now it is related to the tribal. What are the socio-economic features of tribes in India? Geographical distribution of tribal communities and problems of tribal communities. Policies and programs for tribal development and tribal welfare programs. It's very important. But how a question can be asked? Analyze the impact of policies and programs being implemented by the government of India for tribal development. You get my point? So, but first of all, you must have the metal, right? Information. And sometimes even a direct question can be asked that discuss or describe the geographical distribution of tribal communities in India and examine their issues or problems. So this is about the tribal society. Then family, marriage, kinship and religious systems in India. In paper 1 also we discuss about family, marriage, system, religion, everything we discuss. But that is related to the global society. Paper 1 is general and global society. But here the discussion is related to Indian society. That family system, marriage system, religion, problems of religious minority. This is very important. Even 2022, a question was asked. What are the problems of religious minorities in India? What are your suggestions to integrate minorities into Indian social and political system? Right? So, first of all, we must know who are minorities, what are their problems, and the perception of the minorities. What are the perception of the minorities? And what kind of constitutional protections provided for the minorities? For example, Article 29, right? Article 30, right? There are certain articles which provided protection for the minorities. So this is again very important topic. Then visions of social change in India. I told you what India today is totally different from what India was in 1950s. No doubt Indian society has advanced. Now we are talking about Viksit Bharat. Even they may ask you a question about that vision, that vision of social change, vision of development. right? How the vision of Viksit Bharat would help to make India as a developed nation. But here, first of all, you need to have a theoretical background. That is, what is the idea of development planning and mixed economy? So here I would like to tell you that the idea of development planning has started with Nehru-Mahalanobis development planning. In fact, almost for 3 decades, economic planning was implemented in India, right, on the basis of Nehruvian Mahalanobis model of development, right? Whether industrialization or education system, irrigation development, all that was based on Nehruvian vision of development. That we can call it as Nehru-Mahalanobis model of development. So then they have initiated mixed economy concept. That means in those days there was an argument whether to have a socialistic pattern of economy or capitalist pattern of economy. Because there were only 2 development models in those days. Mostly Russia, China, they have adopted a socialist model of development. But America and other countries, they have adopted a capitalist model of development. But Nehru and others, the Mahalanobis and all others, they have come out with what? A mixed economy. That means integrating with the private economy with the state economy. Okay. Similarly, constitution, law and social change. That means, you see, there are many articles which have focused on the social change, because constitution has provided protection for various social categories through which so much of change took place. For example, take what is that? Affirmative action. Take reservations. We call it as a reservations. That means reservations, constitutional reservations have contributed for the change, right? Educational, economic and political change in Indian society. Then several legislations were initiated to provide protection for women. For example, take Hindu Marriage Act, right? SC/ST Atrocities Act, Dowry Prohibition Act. Like there are several legislations which contributed for social change. I mean, see, here we have to link how constitution and law contributed for social change. Then similarly, education and social change. So what kind of education system we had? Even here, even they may link the new education policy and social change. How new education policy would contribute, 2020 would contribute for social change in India. So you need to understand the important aspects of new education policy 2020. And rural development programs. This is very interesting. And many times, almost every year, some questions are asked related to these development programs. For example, take MGNREGS, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. So what is the social impact of MGNREGS on rural society? Right? More than 1 decade, MGNREGS has been implemented. Okay. So what happened with this MGNREGS? So here we are not just trying to understand the rural development program, but we need to understand its impact on the society. For example, there is one program called Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushalya Yojana, initiated by the present government. What is its impact? Like that there are many rural development programs. We need to examine its impact on the social, economic and political system in India. Then another most important topic, Green Revolution, which is very important. How, even I think 2023, one question was asked about Green Revolution and social change. Green Revolution as a package program have certain positive changes. Like our food grain production has increased. I think when it was started around 67, 68, our food grain production was hardly around 80 million tons. Now we have more than 300 million tons. That means we are able to attain food security in India, mainly because of Green Revolution. So there are certain positive consequences. But as a sociologist, our concern is what are the social consequences of Green Revolution. Our concern is whether food grain production has increased, whether we have attained food security or not. That's not a matter. What is required here? What are the social consequences of Green Revolution? What happened after Green Revolution? There are many studies. For example, economic disparities in rural areas have increased very much. Because Green Revolution as a package program is conducive only for the big farmers, not to the small farmers. So it is the big farmers who have benefited much with the Green Revolution, not the small farmers. So economic disparities have increased very much. Even regional disparities have increased very much. Regional disparities. Green Revolution as a package program need certain preconditions. Everywhere you cannot implement Green Revolution program. That require assured irrigation facility, right? Fertile land, right? And investment on agricultural inputs, right? Green Revolution is more technology oriented. You need farm equipment like tractors, right? Then you need to invest, the farmers need to invest on chemical fertilizers, high yielding variety seeds, insecticides. So that means the economic burden on the farmer has increased very much. So the areas which are conducive for these conditions have prospered, and the dryland areas, they remained in backward. So therefore, regional disparities have increased very much. For example, take UP. Western UP has prospered with Green Revolution. Even today, Eastern UP is still very backward. Take Maharashtra. Vidarbha, still backward. So many farmer suicides. Then other region, very rich, like Pune belt. That happened. So like that we can give a number of examples. So like we have to analyze the social consequences of Green Revolution. Then problems of Indian agriculture. Yeah, social movements, which is again very important topic. Indian society has experienced several movements. Like peasants and farmers movements, women's movements, backward classes movements, Dalit movements, environmental movements, ethnicity and identity movements. From sociological point of view, we need to discuss what are the issues raised by these movements, number one. For example, take Dalit movement. Dalit movements have raised certain specific issues. The issue of self-respect, issue of untouchability, right? Like each movement has raised some specific issues, number one. Secondly, whether these movements were successful or not in attaining their goals. Some of the movements have attained their goal and some of the movements were suppressed. Some of the movements still continuing. For example, take ethnicity movement. Recently in Manipur, right? Now the question may be asked on that. What happened? Which tribes? Meiteis and Kukis. These two are two ethnic groups. The ethnic conflict is continuing in Northeast. So we have to identify, we have to trace out what are the reasons for the conflict between Meitei and Kuki. Similarly, women's movements. What are the issues raised by the women's movements in India? Now we may link this to, what is that? Women's reservation, right? In Parliament. Like all these movements are related to some or the other issue related to Indian society. So we need to discuss about all these movements. So when we discuss about this movement, we have to critically examine, right? Then population dynamics. This again very important topic. Population is an important issue, and especially in 2024, India has become number one in terms of population. Now it is a major challenge for Indian society. Now this is very much related to your essay and also general studies, right? They may ask you a question related to the population issue, right? In some form. Today we have around 140 crore population. Now issue is whether this growing population is a burden or an asset for Indian society. Argue. Then you have to argue how population growth from 1951 till now. Then whether it is an asset or a burden. If it is an asset, how it is asset. If it is a burden, how it is burden. All that we need to discuss. Okay. Then we are talking about the demographic dividend all the time. Demographic dividend. If you go through the literature on population, the demographic experts say that India is the only country where we have majority of the young population whose average age is around 28 or 29. So what is demographic dividend? So whether we are able to derive demographic dividend through this growing population, then if at all we want to derive the demographic dividend, what kind of population is required? Can we really derive demographic dividend with the existing population? Is it possible? So how to transform the human population as a human capital? From economics point of view, just mere having human population is not enough for faster economic growth. What is required? Human capital. That human capital means what? A population with skills, population with knowledge, population with the energy to work. So how to convert this human population as a human capital? So all that we have to discuss about this population. National population policy, that's also very important. Then in the context of population growth, if you look at the population distribution in India, we have two important issues. One is aging population. You know, the average age of the Indian is increasing, right? Even the life expectancy at birth has increased. It's increasing throughout the world, including Indian society. So since the life expectancy is increasing, the old age population, now I think it is around 12%, and in the course of time it may become 20%. So the dependency ratio will increase. So in this context, what are the problems of the aged? What are the social problems, economic problems, psychological problems of the aged population? And what kind of policies are required, right, to provide a productive life for the aged population? Then another most important one, sex ratio and child sex ratio, which is very important. Our population is increasing, but whereas the sex ratio, more specifically the child sex ratio, is declining. Especially if you look at the data, child sex ratio is declining, especially in the states of Maharashtra, Punjab, Haryana, Gujarat. In all these so-called developed states, the child sex ratio has gone down like anything. You can see the data from 1991, 2001, 2011. We have statistical data. So with that data, we can analyze how there is a declining trend in the child sex ratio. And what are the reasons for that? Why? Why? Can you tell me one reason why? What are the reasons for declining child sex ratio? In Indian society, still we have a notion of what? A concept of son. The family want a son, especially in North Indian context. That is why female feticide is the main issue in many North Indian states. The female child is killed when she is in the womb of the mother. And what are the reason for female feticide, increasing female feticide? Is the sex determination test, that is called amniocentesis. You see, you have to link how technology, when I should say that technology has contributed for the declining child sex ratio in certain states, especially in the states like Punjab, Haryana. For example, in Punjab and Haryana, the child sex ratio is around 847. 847 girls per 1,000 boys. You see. So all these are the serious issues we need to discuss. Okay. Then infant mortality, reproductive health, all these. Then challenges of social transformation. Today we are talking about development. Right? Development is inevitable. For any country to prosper, right? Economic growth, economic development are essential. Fine. But these development projects are creating a crisis in the society. That is displacement. For any development project, whether it is irrigation project or power plant or steel plant, whatever it is, the first requirement is the land. So land is acquired by the state, right, for the establishment of these development projects. These development projects might have contributed for economic development. Fine, that is positive side of the development. But you have to see the crisis created by these development projects. Millions of people, millions of Adivasis, millions of rural people, they are displaced. So that we call development and displacement. So what are the issues of the displaced persons or project affected persons in different states like West Bengal, Orissa, UP, right? In almost all states you can find the displaced persons or project affected persons. It's a very serious issue. And how to manage the consequences of the displacement. Displacement is inevitable. For example, take Narmada Bachao Andolan. That's again very important. Recently one question was asked about Narmada Bachao Andolan. That is related to Sardar Sarovar project. Why Adivasis have launched this Narmada Bachao Andolan? Can we say that they are against development? No. Adivasi movements are never against the development. But they are raising the issues of rehabilitation, resettlement, right? Payment of compensation, right? Restoration of their livelihood opportunities. Many issues they are raising, right? That we have to discuss. Then the environmental problems, sustainability, poverty, of course, this is the issue. Caste conflicts, ethnic conflicts. This is again, you see, just now I was mentioning about ethnic conflicts in Northeast. Even these ethnic movements have actually started in 1950s itself with Dravidian movement. You see, if you look at the Indian society, since 1950s, the South Indians, more specifically Tamilians, claimed that they are Dravidians, and Dravidian culture, Dravidian language, right, and Dravidian religion are different from the North Indian Aryan culture, Aryan languages, and Aryan religion. That is why Dravidian movement was launched by Annadurai and many others, right? Ramaswamy Naikar, Periyar, Ramaswamy Naikar and all. Then you can see the conflicts, say in Punjab, starting with Punjabi Subha movement, then Khalistan movement, right? So then later on JKLF movement in Jammu and Kashmir. Now then Naga movement in Nagaland. Now all these movements were the secessionist movements. Right? It's not only an ethnic conflict. It is a secessionism. What is secessionism? They are not demanding for autonomy. They are demanding for a separate sovereign state. They want to detach themselves from Indian Union. It's a serious issue, serious challenge. Similarly, like communalism, religious revivalism, there are certain topics like regionalism. All these are even there in general studies. These topics like communalism, secularism, regionalism, slums, urbanization and industrialization, all these topics are there in general studies also. So point is that all these are the major challenges for Indian society. We need to discuss about all these issues. So my point here is that most of the topics which we discuss in paper 2, like land reforms, green revolution, right, rural development programs, communalism, regionalism, secularism, right, then crisis of development and displacement, environmental issues, all these topics are directly related to general studies, and these are also helpful for essay writing. A question may be related to essay, for example, environment issue. or any social issue related to Indian society is helpful for essay writing. These are the reference books. If you want, you can take down. For paper 1, these are the important books which you are supposed to, or you can just take a photograph, right? But these books, if you read these books, as I told you, 100%, I can assure you, 100% you can score 150 to 160 marks in paper 1. It's the best. That means throughout the country, almost all academicians refer only these books. And of course, I also teach from these books only. I am going to give you handouts from these books only. Then this is for paper 2. Okay. So these are some of the important aspects related to sociology. Any doubts? Are you able to understand what is sociology now? Is it very difficult subject or simple subject? How do you feel? It's not that difficult. Looks difficult, but not that difficult. You can read, you can understand, you can score good marks.